Thank you, Tom, for being my timekeeper. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 2 p.m. and a quorum of members is present. Diana, can you call the roll?
Mr. David?
Here.
Mr. Kugler?
Here.
Mr. Kurth? Ms. Manley? Mr. Marquardt?
Here.
Mr. Maxey?
Here.
And Mr. Nickerson?
Here. A quorum of members is present. I am joining via teleconference, so I'm going to ask that Tom David chair the meeting today. Tom, can you take over?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given 24 hours in advance by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the official paper, the New Berlin Now. Copies of the agenda were also forwarded to the Journal Sentinel and the Waukesha Freeman, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. And I ask that those present here join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no privilege of the floor at this time, when we'll move to our regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is to discuss or approve a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of approximately $9,995,000 in general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2014. And Roger, I'm going to toss this over to you.
Thank you. This is a refunding of a bond. The school board discussed this, I believe, at the last meeting. Authorized us to proceed forward. At that time, we were anticipating...
Can we get Roger up a little bit? You're not quite loud enough, Roger.
This is a refunding of a outstanding debt. The school board approved proceeding forward with this at the last meeting. At the time we brought this to the board, we thought we'd see a present value savings of about $575,000. The market was absolutely excellent yesterday. Our present value savings is actually going to be $716,000, quite a bit better than we had projected. 7.667% present value savings as a percent. The Government Finance Offers Association recommends you move forward with refinancings when you get a present value savings of 3% or greater. So we've certainly achieved that. We recommend approval of this refunding, and with that approval, then we can move forward.
I also do want to clarify one point. Originally, due obviously to the weather, the circumstances last evening, we canceled last night's regularly scheduled board meeting. In doing so, a couple of the agenda items that we had on there, including the one that Mr. Dixon is referring to at this point, as well as the second item related to open enrollment, were time-bound. Specifically, this item here, in order for us to move forward, we needed to do so in a timely manner immediately or shortly after our original intent to meet, which was last night. If we needed to make an adjustment, there may have been some issues in the market for our reputation as far as going out for these types of refinancing, as well as increased legal fees that would approximate about $10,000 if we were to make an adjustment beyond this special meeting today. So while we appreciate the fact that we were able to pull this meeting in a timely manner, we appreciate your flexibility as a board so that we can move forward within one of our strategic goals, which is to be fiscally responsible with the tax dollars that are allocated to us. And so with that, again, I would support Roger's recommendation to approve this resolution as presented.
And I would make a motion to approve that resolution to borrow the $995,000 as presented.
Second?
Did he say 9 million there?
For the $9,995,000 as presented.
That is correct. We have a motion by Art, a second by Dave. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
I'd just like to mention that I had a chance to talk with Roger about this after or before it was even presented to the board, and we believe that this is the best we're going to get at this point because we see the market for interest rates going up in the future, and so by being able to lock in these savings for our taxpayers, we're really doing some good work here.
Excellent. I think since we're doing this via a conference call, I'll ask for a voice vote.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
Unanimous, 5.
The motion passes unanimously. The next item is B, to discuss and/or approve policy 5114, open enrollment. Joel, can you address this, please?
Yes, this was brought to the board at the last meeting. In essence, what we have to do now annually per the DPI and their regulations are to, in January, determine whether we're going to make an adjustment to our policy as well as whether we have vacant seats available. Based on what we've provided to the board and what we recommended at the last meeting, we are recommending no adjustments to the policy, as well as clarifying the fact that we have no open enrollment seats available per the formula that we've utilized, and that's kind of passed the test over the course of the last few years. It has the formula has been reviewed by our legal counsel, and then as far as the policy itself goes, again, the board does reserve the right to have applicants reapply at certain places, specifically in 7th grade. But our practice will be for this year, we are recommending that we not have to go through that process, but that the board reserves the right, as is stated within the policy, to ask students on an annual occasion to do so. Again, for those entering into 7th grade. So with that, we recommend approval of the policy as well as the seats allocated as presented.
Yeah, I think we have two separate items on the agenda for that, so we might want to just handle them that way.
They are,
Fair enough.
the first item here that we're going to vote upon is the approval of the policy 5114, open enrollment. And the next,
And I would like to move to reaffirm policy 5114, open enrollment.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who is that?
Jody.
Jody?
Jody? We have a motion by Art, we have a second by Jody. Is there any discussion on this topic?
Just a quick comment that, yeah, not only has this policy been reviewed, but it's also been to DPI for arbitration several times, and we have always won with it, so we don't want to be messing with it.
Great. Any further discussion? Hearing none, voice vote?
Mr. David?
Yes?
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
5-0.
The motion passes unanimously. The next, as discussed, will be the discussion or approval declaration of open enrollment seats for 2014-2015. Joe, is there anything further to add on that?
Again, similar to what Mr. Marquardt mentioned with the policy itself, the formula that we utilize that's been legally reviewed and suggested to us has been upheld within various appeals over the course of the last several years. And so again, based off of the formula, we have determined that we do not have seats available for open enrollment for the upcoming school year.
And I would like to make a motion to approve the open enrollment seat availability report as presented, as well as to waive the requirement of seventh graders to reapply for this year.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Dave?
Motion by Art, second by Dave. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we please have a voice vote?
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
This was under closed session.
Closed session.
That's on closed, okay,
Oh, yep.
which we don't have.
Yeah, we were gonna go into adjourn to closed, should be next.
Okay. At this time, I will make a request for a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll read the recommended action. The consideration of movement into closed session is pursuant to section 19.851C, E, F, and G of the Wisconsin State Statutes to consider C, job performance, compensation, and employment of a public employee over which the Board of Education has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility. E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. F, to review personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories and data. And G, conferring with legal counsel concerning strategy to be adopted with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The board is to discuss and have possible action on the approval of our closed session minutes of January 13th, 2014. B, employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff. C, negotiations. And that will be all for closed session. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And that is that Jody?
Yes, Jody.
Thank you.
First by Mr. Maxey, second by Jody. Please call the roll.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yep.
We are adjourned to closed session.
Yay.
Dan, will we have to, do we have to
Yes,
approve
yeah.
that?
Jody, I noticed as I drove by your office, you're at home today. Yes, I am.
Can you hit stop record?
Heavily medicated.
Want to keep it going, I can't stop.
But they turn the recording down though, right? Or the audio?
That much.
There you go. Yep, open. Don't you have to go the other way, Jeff? It's backwards, right?
It is, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we have returned to open session. And we have motions to be made for items that were discussed in closed session. The first item is the employee services report.
I move to approve the employee services report as presented. Second.
We have a movement by Mr. Maxey, second by, is that Jody?
Kugler.
Mr. Kugler?
Voice vote.
Voice vote, please.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yep.
Is there any discussion? Nope, we already did that part. So that motion is approved. The second motion is the approval of the administrator contracts as presented.
I move to approve the administrator contract as presented. Second.
Motion by Mr. Maxey, second by, it sounded like Mr. Nickerson.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
And that was approved unanimously. The final item is the approval of using Willis as our healthcare consultant in this agreement as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Art.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that? Second by Mr. Maxey?
I checked with somebody else did too.
Well, motion by Mr. Markwart, second by Mr. Maxey. Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
That has been approved unanimously. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Can I have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Art, second by Mr. Maxey. Voice vote?
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mr. Markwart?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson?
Yes.
Motion to motion to adjourn is approved unanimously. We are currently adjourned.
Before